Why are you a stay-at-home wife, Jamie?
Lynn, my sister-in-law, suddenly asked me that. Why, you ask? I just thought it was my job to take care of the home. Ken is busy with work, and if someone doesn't manage the house, it won't run smoothly. When I answered that, Lynn exaggeratedly acted surprised.
Housework is a job? What century are you living in? A stay-at-home wife without kids has absolutely no value.
She rested her elbows on the table and mocked me. My name is Jamie, and I'm a 34-year-old stay-at-home wife. I met my husband, Ken, at work. He proposed to me when I had to quit my job because I got sick from overworking. I got married at 30, and I've been a stay-at-home wife ever since. My in-laws said it's rare nowadays for someone to be a stay-at-home wife, but they respected our decision as a couple. However, Lynn, who's 3 years younger, has always had something to say about my choice since I got married.
Being a stay-at-home wife is outdated. It's the age of gender equality, where women should thrive in society too. Why are you living like a slacker when you don't even have kids?
She's been making snide remarks like that ever since I got married. I guess to a career-driven woman like her, I probably seem like a total failure. I used to work just like her. I couldn't help it when my body stopped cooperating.
Hey, don't be disrespectful to my wife. We've made these decisions as a couple, so keep your nose out of it.
Whenever Lynn picked a fight with me, Ken would always stand up for me. However, it appeared that even this agitated Lynn, prompting her to raise her voice further.
Listen, Ken. If you stay with someone so worthless, you'll regret it one day. I'm doing you a favor by warning you. You should be grateful.
Both Ken and I were utterly fed up with her words. It seemed like she was determined to believe she was always right, no matter what. My in-laws didn't scold or rebuke her. They seemed to believe whatever their daughter said must be right. Lynn was one of those so-called capable women who had succeeded in various battles like higher education and job hunting. She was fiercely competitive, always spoke her mind when she thought she was right, and never backed down. That's just how she was. I heard she worked in trade administration at a foreign company and lived alone in the city, having moved out of her parents' suburban home. Compared to that, Ken had gone to an average high school, graduated from a regular college, and got a job at a typical company. We also lived in the suburbs, about a 30-minute drive from my in-laws' place. Well, this was something we decided together as a couple to live modestly. Ken had apparently been looked down on by his sister for a long time.
Ordinary people just get weeded out in society. Poor Ken.
That was her catchphrase, or so I'd heard. In contrast, Ken never let those scornful words get to him, and he would laugh them off, saying,
I'm me, and society's not that harsh. You're just too worried.
"You've always been such an easygoing person. Just like me."
That's right. That's why we're such a good match.
We've always gotten along really well as a couple. Even though I sometimes felt guilty about not working, Ken was always considerate, trying to make sure I didn't feel bad about it, and he always shielded me from Lynn's nasty comments. To me, he was the perfect husband. That didn't mean it felt good to be called a parasite or a slacker by Lynn. Since my health had improved, I started thinking about getting a job. Of course, a full-time job would still be tough, and it's not like I could find a part-time job nearby right away, but I decided to give it a try. When I went to the job center, I surprisingly found a part-time job right away. It was a shift job, 2 days a week, either in the mornings or afternoons. This way, it seemed like I could manage without putting too much strain on my body.
Hey, don't push yourself too hard, okay? Make sure you take care of yourself.
I know. Who do you think you're talking to? Ken chuckled when I said that. I thought I might increase my working days once I got used to it, but considering my past health issues, I decided to stick with 2 days a week for the first 6 months. Once I actually started working, I felt lighter and more refreshed than when I stayed at home. Of course, work came with its challenges and tough moments. Nevertheless, my heart was filled with the sense of being needed. One day, we got a message saying,
We need to talk.
and we were called to my in-laws' place. When we arrived, Lynn was already there, glaring at me with her usual sharp look. Next to her sat a man, quietly by himself. When we took our seats, Lynn suddenly spoke up.
This is my fiancé, Tyler. We've decided to get married.
I was surprised by the sudden announcement, but since it was good news, both Ken and I sincerely congratulated them. Tyler seemed like a calm and gentle man, quite the opposite of Lynn.
Nice to meet you, Ken, Jamie. I look forward to getting to know you both.
The pleasure is ours. He was so polite that I couldn't help but feel a little intimidated. Still, why would Lynn, who always mocked my ordinary husband, decide to marry such an unassuming person? They say you shouldn't judge people by their appearance, but I couldn't help but wonder. However, when I overheard my in-laws asking him about his job and family background, I quickly understood the reason. He worked at a bank, and his parents were both government employees. He owned a house in the city and was the second son. I see, he was practically the perfect match for marriage. His job was relatively stable, and his parents didn't have to worry about being laid off. Furthermore, owning a house in the city meant he was fairly well off. Of course, it made sense that Lynn would choose such a person. Next, Lynn introduced us to him.
This is my brother. And the woman next to him is his wife, Jamie. She's a stay-at-home wife, believe it or not.
I could only manage an awkward smile at such a strange and unnecessary introduction. It bothered me a bit that her fiancé was looking at me with a blank expression.
Come on, Jamie works 2 days a week at a part-time job, so she's not a stay-at-home wife anymore.
Ken interjected, and Lynn frowned.
2 days a week. I'm surprised anyone would hire you for that. Even high schoolers work more these days, don't they? That's basically no different from being unemployed.
Her harsh words left the room in a heavy silence. Even though it was supposed to be a happy occasion, I felt like I'd made things awkward by becoming the topic of conversation. Trying to lighten the mood, I said, "Well, working outside is nice. It's just a part-time job, but I plan to keep at it." I couldn't believe she'd belittle me in front of her fiancé. Seeing her act that way, I couldn't help but worry about how Tyler would feel. However, it turned out my concerns were unfounded. Lynn and Tyler seemed to get along well, and soon, they set a date for their wedding 6 months later. When are they officially registering the marriage? I asked Ken about their plans.
Apparently, they want to do it after the ceremony according to his parents' wishes.
Oh, I see. I didn't think much of it. Some families have their own ways of doing things. I hope the wedding goes well.
Yeah, maybe she'll mellow out a bit after getting married?
That'd be nice. People don't change that easily, though. Well, since it's a happy event, let's put any hard feelings aside and offer our congratulations. That's how I felt. The wedding day arrived. The sky was clear and blue. It wasn't too hot or too cold, a truly refreshing day. I put on a bit more makeup than usual for the first time in a while and slipped into my new dress. I couldn't help but feel a bit more excited than the bride herself. How silly, I thought, chuckling to myself. When we arrived at the venue and were chatting in the family waiting room, Lynn, in her wedding dress, quietly approached me.
Oh, so you came, Jamie.
What? What do you mean? I was invited, wasn't I?
It takes guts for a slacker to show up at a wedding.
I had no idea what she was talking about. After all, I had signed my attendance on the RSVP card, so of course I was going to attend. She continued.
I thought you'd be too embarrassed as an unemployed loser to show your face in public, but I guess you've got some thick skin.
It's a special day today, so don't you think it's inappropriate to say such things? I replied as calmly as I could.
Excuse me? Are you talking back to me? Are you trying to ruin my wedding?
What?
Tell me, what were you thinking when you came here today? That dress and bag, did you buy them with my brother's money? Dressed up with someone else's cash. How pathetic. Are you here looking for a new man? Unhappy with his low salary, so you're hunting for a new meal ticket?
That's enough. When I shouted, everyone turned to look at me, their eyes wide in surprise.
This is why I can't stand housewives with no social skills. Today, I'm the star. If you cause any more trouble, I'll have you thrown out.
How could she say such things when she started the argument herself? I felt like shouting right back, but all eyes in the room were on me with disapproval. As I struggled to hold back tears of frustration, Ken rushed over to me, looking concerned.
Are you okay? If it's too hard for you, you don't have to stay for the reception.
However, if I left, it would embarrass him and my in-laws. I'm fine. I'm sorry for making a scene. As I exchanged these words with Ken, a man approached me.
Excuse me,
Yes?
I'm sorry to intrude, but haven't we met somewhere before?
Even if you say that.
Right, of course. Oh, I'm a friend of the groom, John. I'll be giving a speech as a representative.
I see. I'm the bride's sister-in-law, Jamie. Sorry for the commotion earlier. As I greeted, John continued to look at me curiously.
I'm sure we've met somewhere before. Oh, wait, could it be?
As I listened to him, I started to remember too.
No way, to meet you again in a place like this.
Really, what a coincidence. I never thought I'd reconnect with an old acquaintance like this. It didn't take long for our connection to become clear. In no time, the reception began. I no longer wanted to look at Lynn's face, so I focused on enjoying the food. After all, I had given them a generous wedding gift, so I deserved to get my money's worth. When it was time for the groom's friend to give his speech, John, who had spoken to me earlier, took the microphone. It was a heartfelt speech, filled with both laughter and tears. Subsequently, he continued with this.
On a personal note, I just had the chance to meet a doctor who supported me when I was a medical intern.
He spoke at length about how much it had meant to him when I encouraged him during a time when he almost lost his spirit.
Knowing that such a mentor is the bride's sister-in-law made me feel really warm inside. Once again, congratulations.
I never expected to hear about myself in this setting, and I was completely stunned.
Were you two acquaintances?
Ken asked, and I nodded slightly. Most of the wedding guests had no idea about my former profession before I got married. As murmurs spread across the tables, a loud voice came from the bride's seat at the head table.
What? What do you mean, a doctor?
Lynn suddenly lost her composure, and Tyler, sitting beside her, looked flustered and alarmed. The MC and the venue staff were also caught off guard. What do you mean? She's just an unemployed loser, right? Why is this happening? In the silence that fell over the room, only Lynn's outburst echoed. The MC tried to carry on with the reception cheerfully, but the atmosphere remained tense. Not long after Lynn and Tyler left the room to change outfits, Ken and I were approached by a staff member.
The bride is requesting to see you.
They said, guiding us to a waiting room.
What's going on? Did you deceive me?
As soon as the door opened, Lynn lunged at me. Ken held her back tightly, but she lashed out at everyone around her.
Why did you keep quiet about who she is, Mom and Dad? Were you all trying to fool me?
No, we didn't know either.
My in-laws shook their heads desperately, denying it. Of course, they wouldn't have known. I had kept my past as a doctor and the fact that I had quit because it was too tough a secret all this time. I didn't want anyone, besides Ken, to know that I was someone who had run away from my struggles. Luckily, my in-laws weren't the type to pry, and Lynn had dismissed me as lazy from the start, never bothering to learn about my past. I never thought that my past would come out like this. I used to work as a surgeon. Since I worked at a university hospital, my duties included not only clinical practice but also research and attending academic conferences, leading to work hours that exceeded 300 hours a month. On top of that, I was asked to train interns, pushing myself beyond my limits. It was no surprise that my health deteriorated, and before I knew it, I was so weak that I could barely walk straight. Ken was a pharmaceutical sales rep who frequently visited my workplace. He kindly reached out to me when I was in that state, and that's when he proposed.
I can't believe it. Why you?
Though those around us tried their best to calm Lynn down, her anger showed no signs of subsiding.
What was that speech about? You planned it all just to humiliate me, didn't you? You're such a self-centered woman.
Wait a minute. I had nothing to do with the speech. That's when Tyler cut in.
Actually, he asked me for advice on what to say in his speech, and I gave my approval. Was that wrong?
Oh no, so that's what happened. While Lynn's behavior was unacceptable, it was easy to see that praising anyone other than the main couple wasn't suitable for a wedding speech. This guy seems a bit clueless himself. However, it seemed Lynn no longer cared about any of that.
This is the worst. You've ruined my wedding. You said you were an unemployed loser. Why didn't you tell me you were a doctor? You've been looking down on me this whole time, haven't you, you spiteful woman?
Oh my. It's your own fault for assuming I was an unemployed loser. It wasn't necessary for me to tell you, was it? What does my past have to do with you?
Shut up. I don't care what you used to be. Now you're just working a part-time job 2 days a week like anyone else. Don't act so high and mighty.
Sure, I work 2 days a week as a doctor at a university hospital near our home. I don't think that's something just anyone can do. At that, Lynn seemed to run out of things to say.
Why? Why does someone like you get to be a doctor? Why?
She spewed out her incoherent, emotional words and shouted.
I hate you. Get out of here. Leave.
As she tried to push me out of the waiting room. I will, don't worry. I don't like you either. For the first time, I showed her my open hostility. She didn't seem to expect such a strong response, and after a moment of stunned silence, she shouted,
You curse bringer.
Even as I looked at the pathetic bride, her makeup and hairstyle ruined, I felt no emotion. Ignoring her, I left the waiting room, and Ken spoke up.
It must have really been an insecurity for her.
Insecurity? Ken explained that Lynn had aimed for medical school during high school. However, she gave up because she struggled terribly with math, chemistry, and physics.
She must be pretty bitter about you being a doctor. Still, her behavior was over the line. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
It's okay. Honestly, I feel better after standing up for myself. At that moment, my in-laws approached us.
We're so sorry for our daughter, but today is her special day. So could you please forgive her?
She's just overwhelmed right now. Please try to understand.
They said this to me, but their real message was clear: leave this place. Understanding their intentions, I replied, We'll leave now. It seems like she can't calm down with me around. At that, they looked relieved. I couldn't blame them for valuing their own daughter over a daughter-in-law. I didn't even feel angry about it anymore. Ken and I spoke in unison.
From now on, we'll be keeping our distance. We wish you all the best.
My in-laws stood there, mouths agape, watching as we walked out of the venue. Afterward, Lynn broke down in tears, making it impossible to continue the reception, which was then canceled. The groom, disgusted by Lynn's shameless behavior, called off the engagement on the spot, and the marriage was called off. Even now, Lynn blames me for ruining her marriage, but I don't care in the slightest. Anyone could see she brought it upon herself. She's just paying the price for all those years of looking down on others. I didn't feel even a shred of sympathy. Ken and I have completely cut ties with his family.
Aren't you lonely being separated from your family?
I asked Ken.
What are you talking about? You're my family, Jamie, and besides.
He gently placed his hand on my stomach.
Let's build a warm, loving home for this little one.
His smile seemed to envelop both me and our unborn child in a cocoon of warmth and care.